It goes through the Rolodex of your history and say, ooh, that might be dangerous. That might be dangerous. She wiped out halfway to home plate in softball when she was 12 years old. What if, given this presentation, she screws up like that and everybody's watching her? No, no, no. We're going to tell her, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. That's your brain. That is not you. Hey, hey, it's Penny. I'm back. And last week, Deep Influence was just great. One of the things that we really got into is how the brain creates what we consider our 3D identity, how the brain gets caught on certain topics on repeat, depending on what we have going on in our lives. We can get caught in spirals, we can get pulled down, we can get in a loop, get stuck in the round room, put ourselves in the box, whatever you choose to call it. And all of this comes down to our 3D identity. And hey, we truly believe that we are our 3D identity. And in hypnosis, this is where I work with clients to recalibrate, AKA align their foundational identity with who they're becoming. Because when that ingrained identity within our brain doesn't match who we're becoming, especially when we're on a conscious or a spiritual awakening or seeking path, that's when we start getting into resistance. That's when we start feeling stuck. That's when we get into confusion and we just can't seem to sometimes. I've been here, feel like we can claw our way out of a paper bag. The patterns that you go through, the stories that you tell yourself, the beliefs, the self concepts, the I am, that is your brain set. The mind, where is the mind? Go search for it. Tell me where the mind is. Please, if you can tell me where the mind is, because researchers cannot locate the mind within the brain. Consciousness is more than the brain. However, we have direct influence over the brain so that the brain can align with our consciousness and who we really are. Because the brain is brilliant, but it's also a trickster. It convinces you that the patterns, the experiences of your life is your story. It convinces you that that's your reality, that your history defines you, and that's not true. Because when many of those perceptions were made, we're doing it based off of feedback we're getting from the environment around us, and everybody else is walking around with their own 3D identity and bag of beliefs that they accept as truth. And they've never done this work. People believe that going to work, punching a clock, punching in, punching out, coming home, living for the weekend, they believe that that's what life is. And that if they're a good person, they go to heaven. We go through this space where we look to the world outside of us to define us, to tell us who we are, to give us feedback around our worthiness, whether or not we're lovable, whether or not we are a good person. And sometimes we find ourselves conforming to meet what the world says instead of what our heart is telling us what is true around us. And then there are other times where we may be in a situation and surprisingly, we react out of character with who we normally are. And why does that happen? Why does that happen? I talked about it in Deep Influence, why that can happen. It's called state dependent learning. But this 3D identity, it's formed off of memories, patterns, our brain records when we enter in a situation that's uncomfortable, unpleasant, undesirable. What helps us to feel better? What motivates us? Because your dopamine reward system can be tied to something negative. Your dopamine reward system does not have to be tied to something positive. It can be tied to something negative. And your operating persona comes from what is called the default mode network. It is a comparison mechanism. If you ever get caught up in the I ams, I am not sure, I am not smart enough, I've never been good at this, I'm better off doing this thing over here, not that thing over there. It fires off in milliseconds. That is reinforcing your air fingers quote 3D identity. And that is not who you are. You are a soul. You're a cosmic being. We're an energetic being. And we're here having a human experience because the only way that we can grow and expand is to have the human experience. We grow and expand when we're here in this body. We get to peel back the layers of limitation. We get to unlock these doorways that get us out of the box of what society has defined we are, what we have allowed ourselves to believe that we are based on feedback from our parents, the church, our teachers, our college professors, our mentors, our friends. We get to unlock the doors to allow ourselves out of that box of thinking. And hypnosis allows you to rewire these conditioned responses. The beauty that I talked about in Deep Influence is all of the areas that I spoke of that define our identity are either less active or more active in hypnosis. The default mode network is less active. However, the areas of the brain that the default mode network uses for comparison, those are under greater influence in hypnosis. We can shift perception. We can shift meaning. We can shift triggers for dopamine. A lot of it gets rooted in emotion. We can totally change those things and we can update, recalibrate, realign that identity. Now, you don't have to be on a spiritual path for this to matter, but here's what I want to say to you. You came into this world with absolutely nothing wrong with you. There was nothing required of you to be lovable. There was nothing required of you to be worthy of being here, breathing on this planet. You came in exactly as you were meant to come in. And there was nothing wrong with you. And you were lovable. And there wasn't anything that you had to do to deserve or to win that love. Which means that from the moment you're born and you start layering on these patterns, any innocent misunderstandings or misperceptions, that is now a wall that you have begun to erect around yourself. People criticizing you, telling you things, I love you, but, or you're such a bad boy or girl, or you should be ashamed of yourself. You're throwing up more walls around yourself. And this begins to tell your brain, I am not smart enough. I do the wrong things. I mess up. I am a failure. I don't deserve to be loved. Those are all 3D constructs, belief structures. And they're not true. They're not true if they don't align with you being unconditionally lovable, worthy, and coming in with intelligent design. They're not true. And I know this is going to be a brain breaker for some people, but your brain is literally a 5 to 7 pound mass of fatty, slippery neurons that are nothing more than a computer. What programming we put in is going to determine the results that we get out. With hypnosis, we can go in and we can correct the programming. You can go in and clear the cache, remove the temporary files, get rid of the outdated stuff that doesn't work anymore, and put in that programming that supports who you're becoming, the boundaries that you hold, the self belief that you hold, the impact that you're here to create. Your brain is the hardware. Your autonomic nervous system, part of it is baseline operating system, and part of it is adaptive programming. So when we get stressed, fight or flight, but just our normal homeostatic breathing, sleeping, sexual cycles, hormones, when we're in a eustress state, normal, peaceful state, that is our operating system. But then we have programs that will hijack the operating system. Think of consciousness as you being at the keyboard and you're keying into the computer that you want it to perform some operation for you. There's some program you want to run and it keeps giving you garbage for an answer. It keeps crashing. It's not giving you what you want. You have this vision and idea. You have this inspiration. So in that moment, you are like consciousness. But the computer with the faulty programming that keeps crashing and giving you the wrong answer and a distorted feedback, not talking to each other the way that it should, that's the brain. That's the brain. So your consciousness, your soul, is wanting you to create in this world, but your brain is getting in the way. Your brain is causing you to not hear, to not see, to not be tuned in, not cooperate. It's not synced up. The softwares aren't talking to one another. They're not compatible. The firmware's not been updated or whatever else that you want to call it. When you can step back and witness what you're experiencing, when you can get into that higher perspective and you can observe yourself without judging yourself and accept that you're having this experience and okay, what do I need right now to move through this so I can continue on my way? Now you are starting to get dominion over your brain. You are starting to get control of your thoughts. You're starting to get control of your emotions in a healthy way, not in a push them down kind of way. Because when we push down emotions and we don't address them, guess what? They cause the programming to mess up. The cache gets full, the temporary files, nothing's wanting to run right. It's bogging down, slowing down, and it is a hot mess. If you're listening to this for your own personal insight, get into that higher perspective as if your brain is the computer. When you can see your brain that way, then your own higher self or soul can come through you in the form of intuition, seeing possibilities, not being trapped in your own thinking, not being a victim, not defining yourself by your stories and all the other nonsense that we as humans love to get into because, hey, humans, we're addicted to suffering. That's what we do. The brain is wired to survive or thrive. Remember, I mentioned that default mode network. That bad boy fires off when there's a threat and it sits and it's idle when we're having a good day. So, this part of your brain exists to be your inner critic when you're doing something that's uncomfortable. And it goes through the Rolodex of your history and say, ooh, that might be dangerous. That might be dangerous. She wiped out halfway to home plate in softball when she was 12 years old. What if given this presentation she screws up like that and everybody's watching her? No, no, no. We're going to tell her, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. That's your brain. That is not you. That is not you. You, me, everybody else. We're all here to have a human experience. We're all here to learn 3D lessons and spiritual lessons. The thing is, everything gets distorted when we're born because when we come here, we forget everything. So, depending on how we experience life, this becomes distorted in that the thing that should feel good, like our heart, our passion, moving towards what we want, all of a sudden now instead of feeling aligned, it feels scary. And now we're conflicted because we really want to do this thing, but at the same time, it's terrifying and we're not moving forward. And that's where those lessons come in to peel back those beliefs, dismantle those beliefs, set them aside, and put a new meaning on our life and recognize that today I am not who I was yesterday. Yesterday does not exist. Yesterday is gone. So I can let yesterday define me, or I can be present right now and I can do what I have to do to move forward. One of the things that I really love, and yes, I'm biased, but one of the things I really love about the way that I'm teaching hypnosis now, yes, it's a 5 path certification, but I have the identity matrix within that certification. And the identity matrix taps into all of these areas, the hippocampus, the insula, the ventral tegmental area, which is where our dopamine comes from. We tap into, you know, addressing all these areas that impact that default mode network and that impact our adaptive behaviors in the anterior cingulate cortex. So if hiding protected you, then believe it or not, your brain can actually release dopamine when you hide and you're not visible. Believe it or not, that can happen because your brain experienced that as a relief. It gives you a reward, which is dopamine. So all of these areas come into play when we're in hypnosis. And just by focusing on the identity matrix method, my graduates have a process that allows them to create the suggestions that they feed back to the client in a session that are going to hit on all of these areas. It's going to hit on all of these areas. And they don't have to be a neuroscientist. They don't have to be a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist. It doesn't matter if you're helping someone with weight loss, people pleasing, stress, nervousness, anxious feelings. Maybe you help people with phobias or you want to help people with pain or any other thing. When someone shifts out of being the individual that dealt with that issue to the person who no longer deals with that issue, their identity has changed. For me, I know at a very deep level that when people gain these insights, they are undergoing a personal transformation that aligns them with who they really are and who they want to be, getting rid of those beliefs, emotions, and habits that aren't serving them. Even if I'm not doing it in a spiritual context, it is spiritual. So keep in mind that you are not your 3D self. Neither is anyone else. When you're getting caught in these patterns, that is the 3D brain. It is not who you truly are. It is not your higher self. It is not your soul that is coming through you as pure consciousness. So if this is something that you want to help other people do, then now is the time. For September, get your application in and schedule your interview for September. Now, I've told people this before, and I'm going to say it again. The interview is not a sales call, it is to make sure that the program is aligned with you and your goals, and that you're someone who recognizes the level of integrity and responsibility that comes with working with someone's mind. Because within the brain, that brain set, that conscious, subconscious, it is their identity, it's who they are. And they entrust hypnotists to do that in a way that supports them and will help them move forward in a healthier and happy way. If you want to do this, I want you to head over to the website pennychiasson.com/certify me and put in your application, because there is 40 to 50 hours of self study that must be completed before entering the 7-day virtual intensive. Let's get you out there doing what you're feeling called to do. And if you're saying to yourself, you know what, something about this is tugging at me, like I feel there's something deeper here for me, then book a call with Tina. pennychiasson.com/private hyphen transformation. Talk to Tina, talk to her about what you're looking for, and she will talk to you about what best next steps are. And depending on availability, you can book in with me or you can book in with her. It includes everything from a soul connection call to full identity transformations. Connect with her, see what is aligned for you. And please, by all means, share this episode with a friend. Share it to your Instagram stories. And if you haven't already, please leave a review. See you next week.